I think we had a very productive fall. Really proud of our kids. I think they put a lot into our strength conditioning program. I think we needed our older kids to lead, and I think there's no question that they did that. We needed some new players to step forward. I think that happened both on the mound and positionally, and so I think it was a very, very productive fall. And we started a little bit later than we normally did, and I really liked the way that worked because we got a lot more individual work done going into the official part of the fall, and ended up getting into some cooler weather, which I like because that's how we're going to start our season out. We're going to play in some cooler weather as well. So productive. Our fall World Series, very competitive. All the little things you want to have happen during the fall happened. So pretty pleased with it.
Questions? Basically, great to help the team. Some of the guys that weren't able to participate in the fall.
Paul Young is somebody that has had some reoccurring aggravations with his arm, and he's really frustrated. I know he wants to get out there, but I think resting him this fall is probably the best thing that we could have done. And he steps into our program with great background of arm strength and helping his team to a national championship in junior college. So I know he was frustrated by not pitching as much as he wanted to. Obviously Woodruff came back slowly from his rehab, very deliberate, but I think his last three outings of the fall were just phenomenal. So it was very much worth the wait. A couple of injuries here and there, nothing major. Of course, Ross Mitchell is just now starting to throw live off the mound from his hip surgery. So I feel really fortunate that we're in a pretty good place in terms of our health.
I think after game one, if I remember correctly, you weren't too happy with the effort, performance, all drop balls, errors. Did you see the improvement that you kind of asked for after that game?
Well, you have to segment those things when it's like 95% of the things are positive, and if one poor thing happens on the mound or behind the plate, it's really magnified. So I think we had a bunch of catchers learning a bunch of new pitchers and vice versa. So we had a few more drops than we wanted to, and I think we really had to learn how to communicate with each other. So anybody who came to our fall inter squad was probably frustrated with the pace of the game because there was so much interaction between pitcher, catcher, first baseman, corner infielders, because they're all kind of getting to know a new pitching and catching staff. So, but I really liked the direction it went and how it evolved during the course of the fall.
John, did you have a guy kind of take a catcher by storm, or is that still kind of an open position as you go into the spring?
It's amazing because all four of those guys just have something tremendous to offer. Garner had the best offensive ball to me out of the four of them. He just had tremendous at-bats and showed power, showed patience, used the whole field. And then you look at Cody Walker, there's no denying the fact that he has incredible arm strength, and he had a nice ball. From the standpoint of offense, he swung the bat really well. We really liked the freshman Collins. He did not have a great numerical statistical fall. Really soft hands, really good blocker, for sure. And Randolph really kind of, from a consistency standpoint, he knew our pitchers the best because he was here a year ago. I think he showed a lot of maturity, a lot of leadership. He probably managed the game the best out of that group of guys as well. So all those guys kind of brought something to the table. But I think January and February is really going to help us because those guys have learned our staff. Now when we come back, who's going to step forward really in about 10 inter-squad games in about a month worth of work? Who's going to step forward and win that job? And I don't think it's going to be one guy. I think it's going to be at least two, maybe three guys in that first month. We have so many games sandwiched together. I think our first three series are 4-game sets. So, you're going to be able to find out a lot on the mound, but we're going to find out a lot behind the plate as well.
When's the last time maybe you've carried more than two on your roster?
Yeah, it's difficult. You usually don't carry two, but I think, you know, like with Garner, just as an example, he's one of our best hitters. So, you know, he fills a void there, you know, automatically. I mean, he has the capability of being a very, very good middle of the order type SEC hitter.
Wes talked about his freshman class attacking the weight room. Did you see him attack the same way on the field, you guys?
I did, and I think that it's so difficult because for the freshmen to step in and for us to, you know, Coach Neal does such a great job in strength and conditioning. We spent 6 weeks really pushing strength and conditioning, and usually the high school or junior college transfer has not been through something like that. So their body goes into a little bit of a shock, just getting used to that level of performance in the weight room and in conditioning. So I think this group might have been a little bit more prepared than years in the past, and I think that this group's strong and very athletic.
Were you able to identify any of the pitching roles that maybe will come up in the spring? I know probably some roles will be set when spring comes, but any type of roles that you'd like some guys in this fall?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the things is we're really going to start with Lindgren in the bullpen. We feel like he has a chance to be a Chad Gerardo type guy, a guy who can fill in several roles. You know, when you look at a guy like Lingo, you ask yourself this question: as a starter, is he going to be more of a guy who's going to pace himself? I tell you, when you tell Lindgren, hey, we need you to get these 3 guys out, you know, this ball was 93, 94 miles an hour with an 85 to 87 mile an hour slider. And there was no pacing himself. It was just attack. And the level of stuff is as good as I've ever seen in college baseball. I mean, the issue is commanding the baseball, and that's something that he works on every single day. So when those 2 things come together, you know, I think he is special, but he becomes even more special. But that's just one example. We really try and tailor our fall after what we envisioned the spring looking like. So we're not gonna, you know, years past, I think during the fall, I say, okay, everybody's gonna get 3 innings, and it doesn't matter if you're relievers. You know, we're bringing guys in left on left, right on right, and trying to establish roles right from the get-go. So we feel like we got a lot of that worked out as well.
How does Lingo feel about that role? I mean, you're talking about a drafted high school kid that probably thought he was going to come in here.
I think he's in love with it. I think he envisions himself pitching in the big leagues out of the bullpen. You know, I think he sees that. I think we see that. I think, you know, there are a lot of guys in the big leagues making a lot of money doing that, and I think he sees himself doing that. I think he's more of a sprinter than a marathon guy. Not to say that 3 years from now he might be a starting guy, you know, in AA, AAA, and in the big leagues, whatever. But he's got a great arm, and just, you know, whenever we make a decision, what we're trying to do is find out what's best for the individual and best for the team. Those are equal. Both of those considerations are equal in our minds, and I think he's in agreement. You know, we don't ever make a decision like that until we meet with the young man and bring him in and say, how do you feel about it? And I think he's totally on board with that.
You talked about catcher, but did you get any closer on the middle infield? Who's going to play short and second?
You know, I think all those guys are going to play early. I really do. I think the first 3-4 weeks, I think all those guys are going to get opportunities. You know, certainly Seth Heck is the new guy in that rotation that I thought had a great fall. Junior college transfer from Washington. We're really impressed with his level of maturity. Just a grinder, just a guy who just, you know, keeps on producing. I think if I had to say, from a positional player, who made the biggest jump just for the fall alone, and things can change for the spring, but, you know, maybe Matthew Britton would fall into that role. He made a big jump. He was a guy who, you know, the door was open at shortstop, and I think he has done everything he can do to try and win that job. I think the bat came alive this fall, and certainly there's never been a doubt about his arm strength, his athleticism. He's going to get a lot of opportunities early at shortstop along with Seth Heck. He will be involved in that. And, you know, Pirtle had a great fall. He's been a great leader for us. I think Kyle Hahn is somebody who's gotten a lot better. So we have 4 guys. You know, a lot of programs have 8, 10 guys trying to get those 2 spots. I kind of like the fact that we have 4. I think all of them are going to contribute, and I think they're all very good players.
A lot was made last year how you handled that bunch of players and the personalities. How are you handling it this year, being kind of the expectations and being the hunted rather than the hunter?
I think our kids have a great attitude. You know, in our sport, and I've mentioned this before, we really believe it. You're really not attacking an opponent. You're really attacking the game. Our kids know that. The more you play this game, the older the kids get, the more they realize the game at any point in time can punch you right in the mouth. And you know, you have to learn how to deal with failure. You have to learn how to deal with success. You have to learn how to deal with your teammates. You have to learn how to deal with an incredible fan base like we have. You have to deal with school. It's all part of a process. I mean, if you could go back and see where Wes Ray was as a pure freshman in our program, see where he is now, where you could have seen, you know, Hunter Renfro as a freshman versus where he was a year ago. These kids just continue to mature and get better. One of the many things I learned, you know, from Coach Polk is, you know, your experience level rivals the talent. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you haven't experienced some of the things you experience in our league at this level of college baseball, then sometimes you're not going to be as successful. It can be done, and certainly, you know, Brett Pirtle's a great example of that. He never played at this level, and he actually did better in the Southeastern Conference than he did in junior college a year ago, which isn't common, but certainly you have to treat everybody differently. Everybody has a different set of circumstances, but I like the fact that we're experienced and we have older kids who can lead this group.
Is there any doubt as to who your captains would be with Wes and Benny?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of doubt, and not to discredit those guys, but I think we have that much senior leadership. You know, C.T. Bradford. I was just talking to Coach Bratton a minute ago. C.T. Bradford's somebody who's offered great leadership. Hurdle's offered great leadership. We have Fitz. Trevor Fitz is somebody who got a ton of votes for captain. It was and that's a neat thing to see. When you see all those votes coming in, you see the amount of kids getting votes. DeMarcus Henderson is somebody that has turned into a real leader. I mean, he has evolved over the last 4 years, maybe unlike any player I've ever coached. So that part was neat to see. I think, you know, when you're on the outside looking in, you go, okay, Ben's been here as a fifth-year guy. He's a tremendous leader. Wes was a captain last year. But I told our kids today when we met, I said I would absolutely love to have 27 captains instead of just 2, and I want all of our players to treat it that way.
You've been able to offense basically coming out of fall. I mean, you've told me many times in the past you don't judge your offense off.
Great example of that. I always had a great fall.
Yeah,
Every
that's
first
true.
day as a player. The fall doesn't count, does it?
Fall American.
Fall American, yeah. I could have been a Fall American. Never was an All American. Yeah, I think you want your kids to do well, but it's not. The fall's not a make you break you type of situation. You see the seeds or the beginnings of what could happen in the spring and the fall. So, you know, you see a kid who has great at bats, but he hits 170 for the fall, and you think, man, this guy's has potential to have a great spring. So I think there's a lot of that in our program, but certainly I think we have many kids who deserve opportunities to play, and that's a great challenge to have going into your season. And you know, everybody has to understand their role, and they have to gravitate toward that for you to be good, because I've been around some really talented kids in the past who, you know, in some cases, if they're not getting exactly what they want, it can cause some issues with your club, and I don't foresee that being the case with this group.
Watching them practice, I mean, you've talked in the past, this is trending towards the money ball type get on base, and they really showed that in fall. Is this more an outgrowth of what you've been recruiting, what you've been developing now, that in fall ball, everybody just got on base?
Yeah, we like that component a lot, and certainly a kid like Jake Vickerson, he's an on-base machine guy. You know, Detz didn't have a great fall last fall, but we kind of felt like he was going to be an on-base machine. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call it specifically a money ball, but I understand where you're going with that. You know, we got to have guys who can run, and this is the fastest club I've ever coached. We had 8 kids run 6'6" or better in the 60-yard dash, which, you know, in baseball circles is pretty good stuff. That's very athletic, very fast group. Our times from home to first were very good this fall. And certainly that might have been aided a little bit by the new surface on the baselines. I do. If you're asking me if we're gearing it toward on base and running, certainly, yeah, I think our ballpark screams that out. A year from not this season, but a year from now, there'll be a flat seam ball. It'll go a little further. We're gonna have to deal with that when the time comes. But for right now, I like our kids in our ballpark in that type of environment.
Do you like, you mentioned the attitude of your kids, but it's a mixture of the attitude of your freshmen and the attitude of your veterans. Detsy has kind of taken Reed Humphreys and said, here's how you play third base. But your freshmen don't want to hear that they're not playing. They're not going to play right away. But you seem to be okay with, they seem to be okay with the roles they're in right now.
Well, I tell you, that's the interesting thing about the evaluations. Our kids, just like every other Division I program in America, we do evaluations are very extensive. And just to see the way our freshmen evaluated themselves, the way our freshmen evaluated the older guys, certainly Reed Humphreys is a guy who's going to be a great player. But yeah, I love the fact that he's with a kid like Alex Detz at third base because, Alex has been standing out there when it matters the most, when you compete for a national championship. And, Alex is the guy who comes to me and says, Coach, this guy is unbelievable. Like, this guy, he might end up being the best player in the history of our program. You love that. And you love the fact that a Reed Humphreys is saying, boy, Alex Detz knows what he's doing. I love being around him. I'm getting so much information from him. The neat thing about Reed Humphreys is he goes home and he gets tremendous information. His brother, coming off of a great big league season, and is a young man who played in our program as well. So, yeah, I think we have a lot of that going on. Wes Ray working with our first baseman. It's a neat thing to see.
Have you been able to narrow down the roster at all, or when do you anticipate doing so?
Yeah, we've when we do our evaluations at the end of the fall, we bring kids in, and we will, if they're a possible redshirt, we will say, this could happen. How do you feel about this? I think that's one of our strengths is that our players are really honest with us, and we try and, we don't try, we are brutally honest with our players. Here's what we feel like you are. We might see a redshirt in your future. How do you feel about that? We don't have to make that decision until we get into February, but we don't want to shock anybody. We want them to know exactly where they stand, and it's a very competitive group. Getting down to 35 is going to be difficult. You don't want to make those decisions now because anything can happen in the next 2 months.
Anybody bring any wild suggestions this year along the line of the Beards last season? Any PowerPoints presented to you?
They always have ideas there. They always have ideas. Usually those ideas are about equipment and stuff that they're getting. But they always have great ideas, and we listen. We don't always agree, but we listen, and certainly some of those ideas, you have to earn the right to have, to present those ideas. But yeah, we're constantly evolving and changing some of the things we do based on some of the comments that our players make. When they fill out evaluations, we tell them, hey, this is your chance. Tell us what you think we should change. What do you like about our practices? What do you don't like about our practices? And we get a lot of interesting comments. But what's amazing is, when 43 guys fill out those evaluations, it's amazing how similar their point of view is, and that's a good sign for our club.
John, have you or Butch or Nick reevaluated the way you recruit with the flat seam ball now? Is there a kid where maybe 3 years ago you wouldn't have been as interested in, and now that you're deeply interested in now?
Yeah, the thing that jumps out at you, that's a great question, Matt. The thing that jumps out at you is before, there was a time we had a big physical guy who could really hit it out of the ballpark, and you say, he doesn't have a spot, defensively, you go, I don't care. Let's get him a spot. We'll find him a spot because he can do that. Now, our attitude's been, that guy's got to defend at a high level for us to get him on the field. Maybe that now all of a sudden the pendulum goes in the other direction as the big physical guy who doesn't have a position. Maybe if the game takes off offensively, maybe that changes a little bit for us. But our ballpark, no matter what the ball does, is always going to play bigger, in my opinion, than a lot of other ones. In Omaha, it's going to play big, unless they pull the fences in. If they pull the fences in, at the Southeastern Conference tournament in Hoover, if they, then we'll adjust to that in any way that we feel that we need to do that. But certainly at this point, being able to defend the field is still a big thing with us.
Cool. Any other questions? Thank you, Coach.
Any kind of feedback you heard from the listening sessions about the stadium? I know that's all projected years in the future, but you like the turnout, the questions a lot of fans ask?
I'm telling you, they say live timing's everything, so I love the fact that Duncan McKenzie walked in right when you're asking that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, one of the many things that I think is a strength of our administration is there's not gonna be anything knee-jerk. There's a lot of opinions. I think there's been a lot of listening, and I think there's a plan that's being formulated right now, and I've seen some really cool stuff that the architects preliminarily have put together, so I know, there's a plan in place, and I think that our administration has to make a lot of different points of view happy, and that's almost impossible. But, I keep calling our stadium this grand old girl, because she's getting a little gray around the edges, and we all know that we're gonna have to do something. The question is, how do we go about that? And you don't wanna do something that you're gonna regret later on. So I think everybody's, gonna be on the same page when that happens.